the elephant in the room is the whole free speech thing.
Sure.
Are we bulldozing free speech, or are we, I don't know what else you could say. But I think that the way I wanted to start off is I think that there is less political divisiveness and there is more universal bipartisan support for opposing the ridiculous H-1B fees that Trump and Lutnick proposed. I'm not sure whose brilliant idea it was. I think they're both idiots. But Lutnick seemed to take incredible pleasure, announcing it. I think in the back of Trump's mind, he knew it was dumb, but he's such a ethnocentric racist that he doesn't really, it doesn't bother him that much. But I think that, when the Kevin O'Learys of the world, who I also cannot stand, but when the Kevin O'Learys of the world come out and say it's probably the dumbest piece of legislation that they proposed to date because it will kill innovation, it will hurt startups, it will hurt, creativity, it will be, a brutal brain drain, it will help China, it will help India, it will help all other places around the world, it will kill our grad school system. I feel like that is probably the most important topic, because at some point in the future, free speech will win out. Democracy will prevail. Free speech will win out. I'm not too concerned about that. I am concerned that for the next 3 years, we are going to have a very hard time hiring the best available candidate. And I think that is a huge mistake. We're going to have a hard time diversifying our talent, which is really important to us. It may not be important to Trump, who surrounds himself with, young, good-looking white people, but it's important to me that Tasty and other businesses that we own are diversified, that we have men, women, lots of different races, lots of different
tall people, short people,
short people, straight people, gay people, everything. I want the whole mix. And it's really important to me. And I think it should be important to every single company. And I worry now that we are going to have difficulty hiring, the smartest person, the best person. I mean, from my own experience, I built Thinkorswim with developers from all over the world, including the US, but a lot of developers from Eastern Europe, a lot of developers from other places. I'm not going to mention everywhere, but clearly, we built it with more non-US developers than US developers. At Tasty, we used more US developers, but as far as our talent goes, we've been hiring kids that are, we've been hiring kids that are that are here on student visas and H-1B visas that are, that are going to Notre Dame, that are going to Carnegie Mellon, that are going to, USC, Berkeley. The best schools in America, University of Chicago, Northwestern, it's ridiculous that we have to start worrying about, hey, if we hire this kid, are we going to be able to keep this kid? Because we're going to train them. We're going to put a lot of money into them. We're going to invest a ton of money. And, how do I keep this kid here? How do we afford to keep this kid here? How does this kid even want to stay here? How do they go home to visit their family? They can't get back in. It's so
bad. Can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Do you find it interesting that the average, and I'm generalizing here, but that the average developer's salary is somewhere, let's say, between 150 and 200 for like an entry level or mid-level developer?
Okay.
For American developer.
Yeah.
And the average salary for an H-1B import is like $50,000 to $75,000.
What movie are you watching?
And is it not even more interesting?
That's not true. By the way, let's be very clear. That is a patently false assumption and statement. There's no truth to that. Our H1.
No, you've said a lot of things, with all due respect. You've said a lot of things. You've made a lot of assumptions.
Okay.
6 minutes in, I'm going to say a couple of things.
I'm just telling you, though, that a kid that's here on an H-1B visa that's a developer for us is getting the exact same salary as a kid that went to.
That may be true at Tasty, but that's not true at every institution.
In the U.S., it is true. In other places around the world, it might not be true. But if you're a kid going to work for Meta, or you're going to work for Amazon or whatever,
you don't think that that Amazon or these other or like the big hotel chains, it's not just developers, don't exploit the H-1B to pay less money to have a foreigner come in and work, and in the process keep salaries lower, keep costs lower, and that taxing the H-1B is a good idea in order to level the cost with your average American worker.
Not even remotely the case at any firm I've ever even talked to, know of, not even remote. Okay. The difference that you're not factoring in is that the reason you're hiring that kid in the first place is because they're smarter than the kids that you can find here. And that's why. So you're
saying Americans are stupid.
I'm not. I'm saying
you're saying foreigners are smarter.
I'm saying that you should have the option to hire the best available person. But
if you're going to give that job to a non-American, shouldn't that be taxed? Shouldn't there be a penalty for your decision not to hire a young, ambitious, smart American person?
Not in a true capitalist, not in a free market. Of course not. That is absolutely, again.
I mean, isn't that the entire basis of Trump's presidency? Is the giant sucking sound, going back to Ross Perot, of the labor arbitrage in China, the labor arbitrage.
This is not a labor arbitrage for China. This is not labor arbitrage. Labor arbitrage is when you say, you know what? I'm going to hire a developer in Slovenia. I'm going to hire a developer in Russia. I'm going to hire developers in India, which that's different. If you're going to hire a contracted developer in Eastern Europe, specifically the firms that we use, the price is the exact same as the US. But if you're going to go to places like, just as an example,
Bangladesh.
No. In Eastern Europe, if you're going to
Southern Italy, they do it in Calabria. Even right there, you don't have to go that far.
Bulgaria. If you're going to go to like Bulgaria, Slovenia, and you're going to go to like Georgia, the developers are about 30% less.
Poland.
In India, they're up to 40% less, but you get 40% less value. In most of those cases, you are not getting the same value. So it's not.
But you're saying that the H-1B does not come at a salary discount to the U.S. passport holder.
Absolutely not.
As a cost.
Absolutely not.
I'm saying that, all jokes aside.
I understand. I'm saying absolutely not.
My perception was very much that the H-1B is cheaper, is a way to reduce the cost of, if I'm going to do 100 developers.
No. I'm sorry.
It's cheaper to do H-1Bs than it is to do Americans.
Not even close. And the reason that we do H-1Bs is because we think that they have more talent. And we think that they are a better fit, intellectually. That's why people do it. The whole reason that America leads the rest of the world, there's a reason why this country is so far ahead of everybody else when it comes to innovation, creativity, intellectual technology that's driven by intellectual property, because we do a brain drain of the smartest kids from all over the world. They study here and then they work here. That's the beauty of the system. We are pushing these kids to India, back to India, back to China, because they can't come in to go to grad school. There's no reason for them to stay here after an internship or after school to apply for jobs, because there's no pathway for them. It has nothing to do. We don't save money. In fact, in most cases, we are going to pay a kid that comes over that we hire on an H-1B, like with an MBA from Notre Dame, as an example, the exact same that we are going to hire a kid that comes from USC, exactly the same. And they're both great programs.
There's no economic motivation.
No, there's actually a loss. It costs us more money because we do also take.
You got to pay the immigration lawyers and all the gibberish.
We have some immigration. We always have immigration lawyers on retainer, and that costs us extra money. And so it actually isn't cheaper. If anything, it's a little more expensive, but we want the talent. That's what it's all about. It's just about the talent. The idea,
because my perception of the Trump-Lutnick thing was that this was a penalty not based on racism, but this was a penalty that this was closing a cost gap in a labor arbitrage. And you're saying I'm wrong about that.
I'm saying you are 100% wrong. And if you read a lot of the stuff from every one of these tech giants, from Jensen Huang down to Zuckerberg, down to everybody else, even like I said, Kevin O'Leary, everybody else, they're all saying the same thing. This is not about that. This has nothing to do with getting people cheaper, because they don't get people cheaper. This is strictly about isolationism. This is about racism. This is about just pure stupidity. Like, you couldn't come up.
You're saying this is just, I don't want foreigners. I want to make it
That's
more
right.
for foreigners, straight up, old school.
This is going back, to a really dark time in history when you just want, a certain type of person with a certain skin color looking all the same, and it doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter what school they went to. You could go to, I don't want to
Albany.
You could go to University of Albany. You go to SUNY Albany and get your master's degree, and you're going to get the same thing as a kid that's from Berkeley, that comes over from some African country that went to Harvard. Okay. That's the whole thing.
And so you really think that there's no motivation here that has to do with taxing the labor arbitrage, because you're saying it doesn't exist.
It does not exist. And let me tell you something too, because I probably,
I'm going to be honest, I saw this, I was like, it's probably not a bad idea.
I've probably done, on a percentage basis, as much contracting work, because when we built Thinkorswim 25 years ago, U.S. developers were hard to find. So we contracted a lot, and we even tried to buy, firms outside the U.S. We weren't successful at buying them, but we tried. So I've had a lot of experience, in the contracting space, and the contracting space isn't even a savings. It's like you think it is, because you pay less on a per hour basis, but you also have to deal with a lot of issues that are costly to either fix, that are costly to oversee. It's just that you can, they're like innings eaters. So they more eat time. They pick up, they do a lot of the work, but the reality is you're not saving money on it. Nobody's building a platform for 30% less because they're using contract workers or H-1B. That's not the case at all. And you can talk to any CEO, any tech company in America. I feel like I would bet my life on that. There is no savings.
I mean, then I misperceived it, because I literally saw that headline and I was like, okay, I was like, I bet you the delta between an H-1B and an American staffer is $100,000. My hope, maybe I was just, feeling optimistic, was that this might have been a rational action to level the price. But I'm going to take you at your word. You have vastly more experience managing developers and hiring H-1Bs than I do. I just find, and I also just find it's hard for me to comprehend that you would make a policy purely as explicit anti-foreigner. Like, it's so effing crazy to me.
But why?
Like, I still hold on to the desire to believe that there's something rational somewhere in the apparatus.
We're picking up people we have mass people running around this country, picking people off the streets, breaking up families, and doing everything to just, to hardworking people that pay their taxes. I mean, what the hell? Okay, it's effed up. All right, let's say it like it is. It's messed up. And this is not the America that all of us grew. This is not the free market that all of us grew up in. Okay, that all of us believe in. It troubles me that there's not more entrepreneurs, there's not more tech entrepreneurs, and there's not more wealthy people that are speaking up. It troubles me because it bothers me. Like I said, I can't stand Kevin O'Leary for many reasons, but at least he stepped up and said something this time. And other people need to do the same thing. This is going to hurt us competitively. So I sit on the board of a tech school in Chicago, one of the best engineering schools in Chicago. And their enrollment this year and this next quarter is down by 30%. Not applicants, which is down by like 80%, but their enrollment is down by 30%. They can't fill the seats because before 60 to 70% of the people were not from this country just to go to grad school. This has nothing to do with H-1B visa. These are just student visas because lots of kids cannot get visas to come to the US to study. And they worry if they come here, they're going to be sent home and they're not gonna be able to finish their courses. So the grad schools are dying. The MBA programs, even undergraduate schools, it's ridiculous. I mean, look, you saw how this administration came down on Harvard with respect to foreign students. And on the grad schools, it doesn't matter what the school is. Every school, you could take the best grad school in California or the worst grad school in California. You could take the best grad school in Chicago or the worst grad school in Chicago. They're all hurting. And these kids, they pay full boat. They, because they come from wealthy families that want to send their kids here to learn from the best schools. And it's just nobody coming. Nobody. It's ridiculous.
So the thought that was occurring to me, because when you're talking about Leary, because for me, the tipping point in the Kimmel thing, or at least my perception of the tipping point in the Kimmel thing, was when Ted Cruz came out, whenever it was 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah.
And basically said, I hate Jimmy Kimmel. I hate everything he stands for. I hate everything he says. But I think taking him off the air and threatening the FCC license is absolutely unacceptable. He basically came out in full sort of indictment of the use of the FCC pressure to pull him off.
Of course. I mean, there is no other. I'm making
it. So like whether it's Kevin O'Leary, who's sort of someone who's not easy. You're not going to agree with 98% of what the guy says.
Sure.
But on H-1Bs, he's with you. Or Ted Cruz, who's again not going to be your most agreeable fellow in the mix here. But on using the threat of taking away companies' FCC licenses if they don't remove undesired broadcasters in the momentary political context. I guess what I'm getting at is I do wonder if we're getting to a point where Trump is going to be increasingly isolated to the point where the right wing is, whether it's on the things like the immigration issue or the H-1B issue or on First Amendment issues, this is the first time that I've seen the right wing break ranks with him publicly, I guess is what I'm getting at. I mean, he's only been at it for 10 months right now, but this past few weeks is the first moment where I feel like I've seen at least public rhetoric from the right that is saying, what the hell is going on here?
Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't sit there and say, you know what, the Second Amendment protects my rights to own a gun and kill you, or whatever you want to say. You can't sit there and scream about how important it is to protect the Second Amendment and not at least respect the fact that the First Amendment counts too. And, the hypocrisy is coming back to haunt them. And the hypocrisy is how they pushed it past the level of reasonableness. And this is why they're going to lose, virtually all their majorities in upcoming elections. It's sure. Not, America we don't stand for taking away somebody's right to say something.
That's a red line. I mean, that's the biggest red line that we have as a country. There's no question. But that's what I'm saying is the tipping point for Trump, where all of a sudden that he finally has provoked the right wing to begin to separate from him.
Not everybody agrees with everything Dylan Ratigan has to say, but everybody at least respects the fact that you get to do it. You've earned that right. Definitely not everybody agrees with what I have to say, for sure. I understand that. There's people writing me right now saying, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But I have every right to say it. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. I mean, that's what I think. So it is what it is. And we are open. It's funny to me how everybody who's writing, hey, you shouldn't say this, and that, but they were fine with Charlie Kirk spreading all kinds of, ridiculous conspiracy theories and horrible lies and all that kind of stuff. They're all fine with that, but they're not fine with anybody else saying it. It's ridiculous. That part of the discourse, that part of the free speech, when one of your guys says something, no matter how ridiculous it is, I don't care. He has every right to say it. I might not agree with it. I might think he's crazy, stupid, whatever, but I will never take away his right to say that. Okay. Because that's what it's all about. And the same thing applies for us, for the people on the other side. You know what? That's what makes this stuff so interesting. That's what makes.
Don't you think I found it ironic because I did think that the left-wing cancel culture was out of hand a few years ago, and I found it comical that all of a sudden there's this conservative cancel culture has become the new. I just feel like both political extremes reside in a world of hypocrisy.
Okay, that's fair. But that's fair. Nobody would argue that.
When it's convenient, it's like,
Nobody would argue that. Both sides, they swim in a pool of hypocrisy. I will grant you that. But
do you think Trump right now is increasingly isolating himself? I mean, so we're going to agree on the free speech thing.
Sure.
But I just have the fact that you have, some of the people on the right that you've mentioned, or like I talked about Ted Cruz and others, I've not seen highly conspicuous, highly prominent right-wing leadership out in public condemning the decisions of the president of the United States up to the tariffs. They're nothing, nowhere. The crazy immigration stuff, nothing, nowhere.
He's done a good job bullying. And listen, the people that run the biggest tech monopolies or mega monopolies in this country haven't said anything either. They've kowtowed to him because he has done things like, essentially he has made their path for capital appreciation that much easier. And so, in Trump world, you take the good with the bad, and you just kind of you swallow it until at some point you get conscious. At some point, you're like, you wake up and you're like, wow, I have a conscience now. You regret it for the rest of your life, but that's what it is.
But are we at a moment where Trump is this an indication that Trump is losing his stranglehold?
Yeah, it's a little bit, but he's also, beginning to display lots of signs of dementia, and he's losing more than his stranglehold. He's losing his mind a little bit at a time, and it's pretty obvious. And there's another thing with Trump that's so interesting is a lot of what he does is really just a distraction. A lot of what he does is he says outrageous things, and because he knows that keeps him, front and center. Like, he doesn't have to come out and say Tylenol is bad for you. Like, just think how ridiculous that is. The president of the United States should not be saying that. But the president of the United States loves the PR. Good or bad, doesn't matter to him. Just puts it out there. So
he has top headline every day.
The president of the United States does not have to go in front of the UN and make probably the dumbest speech of all time and piss everybody in the world off. But he does it. I don't know if it's calculated, because I don't think he's smart enough to be calculated, but he does it because it continues to put him on the front page of everything. And that's all that matters. And to his...
I almost think he does it almost instinctively, like a wild hyena.
And it's worked. And the reality is that it's worked for him. He has pulled it off. And so he continues to do it because that's how he maintains his stranglehold. And so far, so good. Now, what happens in these situations. They always reverse. Always. There is no situation.
You're just talking about the political culture? Is that what you mean when you say they always reverse?
The political culture, the business culture, whatever it is. everybody tops out, everybody bottoms out. And it's that cyclicality that is unavoidable. And I think, who knows when, but that's coming.
Because for me, I feel like I'm going to answer my own question. I think this is a watershed moment. I think this is the first time. I mean, watershed may be too strong a word.
Well, what's the watershed moment? The free speech?
For the first time, you have powerful Republicans in direct public disagreement with the president on, like, he's been running out dumb fuck policies, excuse my language, for 10 months. The obvious absurdity with the tariffs and the destruction of the U.S. dollar. The obvious racism and madness with the masked men running around chasing people, or setting in the federal police, the federal forces, National Guard, whatever, as a police force to political targets. It's not even like he's not even looking at the actual high crime. I mean, there's just one idiotic policy after the next. And there's been absolutely no resistance in public anyway, and no apparent resistance in private. And my hope, maybe I'm optimistic right now, is that the Jimmy Kimmel thing, I don't know about the H-1B, but the Jimmy Kimmel thing was the first thing where the Republicans were in opposition to the president and the sort of conservative, hysteria machine that wanted to use their control of the FCC to control speech. And so I take that as a moment of, and also it's October's almost upon us here. We're a few days out from October, I guess next week, but whatever, so you're gonna, like, this time next year, it's going to be an election, or a year from another election. And the next election is going to be an annihilation of the Republican Party.
I think you said something that's interesting. The thing with tariffs is, whether you agree with them or hate them, the reason some people haven't said anything is because you want to give them a chance to succeed or fail. I mean, obviously, the big lie is that somebody else pays the tariffs. It's just American consumers that pay the tariffs. There's nothing else to it. It's not, Trump always walks around saying, the tariffs made us $1 trillion. That's American consumers that paid $1 trillion. You ripped off consumers for $1 trillion. Okay, congratulations. But for some reason, he thinks that that's positive. I'm not sure. But you have to give it some time to at least play out. I guess that's the logic. With free speech, you don't have to give free speech time to play out. There's no discussion here. Like, this is not something we need to see how it plays out. Free speech is free speech. I mean, you can't debate it. Either you live in a place where you have free speech or you don't.
Right. Either the government controls what people are allowed to say, like they do in China and Russia, or they don't. But the point is, Trump, for the first time, went for the Chinese or the Russian framing in terms of control of information. And it was the first time that I've seen Republican resistance to doing that in public.
Well, good.
Which I'm hopeful is the beginning of. I don't believe everybody in the Republican Party is a bunch of lunatic fruitcake nutbirds. I believe they've been intimidated into silence, and they're terrified, and they're pussies. Excuse my language. But I would like. I think that if it would be the country's going to be in much better shape to have rational Republican resistance to the obvious insanity that comes from the White House. That's all. And my hope is that the Jimmy Kimmel thing was or is a crack in the door to allow that to happen.
Okay. As much as I don't like Ted Cruz at all on any level, what he did was hedge his political career. And that's, and I think you're going to see more and more people do that, but he hedged his career because if Trump goes down in flames over this First Amendment thing, which I don't think he will, but I think it's all just a cover to hide, to distract off the Epstein files. But whatever, if he goes down in flames over this, Cruz gets to come out smelling like a rose because he gets to say, hey, you know what? I was the only person that stood up and said it's all bullshit. If you're the first person that stands up, you own that space, which is a very powerful political, that's political currency. and it's really strong. So that's the smart thing. I mean, that's what we try to do here on Tasty, is be the first to say lots of different stuff. And we, I mean, obviously we say what we believe in, but it's also something that we know it carries, it's very valuable down the line.
And my hope is that we're going to get more of that. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Especially if you're telling me that because my perception of the H-1B was that it was an economic arbitrage issue, which you're saying it's absolutely not. You're saying it's just straight up old school racism.
I mean, there are people going back, 40, 50 years, 30 years maybe, that think that, okay, they used to bring in H-1B people. They were cheaper, for data entry and stuff like that. But when you're talking about like core programmers, okay, there was a period of time where in the US, you couldn't, our STEM programs were so far behind. You couldn't even find, I don't care how hard you looked, you couldn't find a team of Java developers. You couldn't find really strong Oracle database teams in the US. They just didn't exist. And they weren't available. It wasn't like, oh my God, they weren't there. The system finally caught up with it after blowing up the engineering space after years, but the talent wasn't there. And there was so much more talent outside the US at really good technical schools that it wasn't even close. So I don't, and I think that people,
because the other side of this is basically what you're saying, and and everybody you're citing is saying, is that this just adds a massive amount of friction and resistance to the rate of innovation in the United States. It's basically it's a total self-own. It's like scoring on your own goal. You are the global magnet for talent. You're the global magnet for education. You're the global magnet for capital. Blah, 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 blah. And you're making policies to try to stop that at all costs.
You're making Canada, 20% better. You're making Mexico 20% better. You are boosting these nations, their intellectual know-how, their intellectual property, their ability to raise capital. Private equity firms in the US are sitting on whatever, $1 trillion. Who knows how much money they have right now? And they have to deploy that money. For the first time, they are looking at lots of businesses outside the US because a US brain drain is the scariest thing in the world to them. And losing that pipeline of really smart people, it's not that hard to see. Go look at some of the people that run the biggest tech companies. Microsoft, Google, those are not Joe Smith. Okay. These are every single name is somebody that came here, and that what really pisses me off is like, people are like, well, I mean, how did Elon Musk get here? I mean, he did get here illegally, but he bought his way in eventually. But, he's another candidate. He has no right to talk. That's how he got here. I mean, it's just one after another after another. It's just unbelievable.
I mean, and that's why I guess it's my naivete. I just find it impossible to believe that a policy that is so destructive to the innovation, the momentum and the culture of innovation would be made for purely racist or anti.
Oh my God! I mean, look who you're dealing with. If this was a fair system, what you would say is, hey, you know what? If you want to hire somebody and they're the best available person and they're going to make this company and this country better and more competitive, paying $100,000 is absolutely ridiculous. You want to charge $100,000 for something? Go charge $100,000 to topless models from Slovenia that want to come to the US. Okay, go charge $100,000 or $200,000 for that. All right, rather than sneaking people through on the Genius Act. That's going to piss a few people off, but I don't give a fuck. But you know what? Let's do that. Let's charge every Eastern European model that wants to come to the US, okay, to marry a rich American guy, $200,000, okay, and forget about charging some kid that's got his PhD from the best technical school in St. Petersburg, Russia, or in Mumbai, and let's get them to come over here and build the coolest AI tech you've ever seen.
So if the Trump policies are as bad as I say they are, or you say they are, for innovation, I'm going to ask and answer my own question here, but why is the stock market doing so well? And you're going to tell me it's because the dollar's in decline. You're saying basically, like, because if I'm on the other side and say, listen, okay, Ratigan and Sosnoff, you guys think all these Trump policies are so bad for America, so bad for innovation, enrollment is down.
Well, I mean, this is something brand new. It's not, it hasn't.
I know, but with a tariff, why is the stock market doing so well if the Trump policies are so bad?
Sure. And that's totally fair. And the answer is, I think you just mentioned it, is well, the US dollar's gotten destroyed. So basically the stock market, it's up, what, 2 or 3% on the year. If you subtract the dollar decline off the stock market rally, it's a tiny little move. And I think that's a very fair way to look at it. And also, you've got the rest of the world up by significantly more. I mean, one thing people stop talking about is the global markets. China, every market in the world is up significantly more than we are, because they recognize, listen, there's a lot of money out there, and there's markets should go up over time, but other market is up way more than us now, because they recognize we're losing our leadership.
And so your argument would be, or my argument, because people ask me this question, they say, "Oh, Ratigan, you have all these criticisms of these Trump policies and this, and this, and this. Why is the stock market where it is?" And my answer is always, imagine where the stock market would be if it wasn't for all these policies.
That is the correct answer. But the other thing is, you got to remember, stock market is a very cyclical machine that, there's only so much that a U.S. president can do to affect the stock market. The argument, I can make the same argument when Biden was president. We made new highs every single year. The stock market did way better under Joe Biden for 4 years than it did under Trump's first administration. So explain that. The stock market did way better.
The U.S. dollar was robust, and on a dollar adjusted basis, it's way better.
The stock market crashed under Bush Jr. and exploded under Obama. Crashed or didn't do anything under Trump, and then exploded under Biden. So the stock market is like, people go around saying, "Oh, look at the stock market's record highs." Well, okay. So was it for Biden the entire time? You guys weren't, talking about that. So I don't think
that's the hypocrisy that we swim in.
Of course. That's why I don't ever bring that up, because that's not that important to me. And I also think the stock market, the concentration of, the top 7 stocks, which have made 30% of the indexes now, and the moves that they've had is just, it's ginormous. I'm not saying that that's not okay. I'm just saying that, you can put a lot of context around the stock market move.
And I'm just going to circle back to my point, which is, for all the horrible, horrible things and all the screwed up stuff, I feel like the fact that the Trump administration was forced to back down on using the FCC to control free speech, that the Trump administration was defeated in their effort to control speech as signs of life in the American democracy.
You can think that. I think that a lot of it had to do with, Disney recognized that this wasn't. Disney recognized internally, I'm sure their board went absolute ballistic, and they recognized that this is costing us a lot of money. This is bad press. A lot of people are canceling their subscriptions, and this is not good for our business at all. And, there's other things we can do in the future, but that's the optics of that were so bad for Disney. They were so good for Jimmy Kimmel. They were so bad for Disney. And I think the optics is what, I'm not sure Disney.
You're not so sure that it was a moral victory for the First Amendment, right, as much as it was the commercial influences.
Yeah, I don't think Bob Iger had a come to Jesus moment. All of a sudden he woke up and, and he thought, oh, this was, I think that the pressure, was that was nasty.
Do you feel like, not that this is a kind of a small thing, but Bob Iger was one of the most celebrated CEOs in the world in his first tenure at Disney, 15 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and then he left and had it was a disaster. Which was reflected on him, a bad succession plan, all the things.
Yeah.
And since he's been back, I just feel like it's one of those things where, be careful what you wish for, because he was a platinum plated icon of CEO-dom when he retired the first time, and I feel like he's really besmirched himself the last 4 or 5 years in this. Not
Well,
just
the challenge is when he came back, the stock traded just over 100, and now the stock's 113. It's been years. So, the Iger movement in Disney has not, I mean, it's underperformed the market at so many different levels. It would be hard to call it a success, but he stopped the bleeding. Let's put it that way. But again, listen, CEOs make mistakes. I get that. I get that. And I do think that it's good that Disney, they recognized it and they reversed it, which is more than I can say for CBS, with Stephen Colbert or again, the optics of that. But, that's a different situation now because it's way different when you're owned by Disney or you're owned by Larry Ellison privately. He doesn't give a crap. That's a whole different world.
Speaking of Larry Ellison and privately owned, do you feel like the TikTok deal is going to have any consequence?
That's a really interesting question. I didn't think we were going to go there, but I will tell you, I hope not. What you're saying is, do you think that TikTok is going to become a conservative social media network?
Or just a weaker product?
I mean, because of Larry Ellison.
Less sizzle, less TikTok-y.
Well, everybody that owns it, except for the Chinese, whatever percent they maintained, I don't exactly know how the breakdown is.
Right-wingers.
They're all right-wingers. Jeff Yaz at Susquehanna is a hardcore right-winger. So, and he owns whatever. He was probably the biggest shareholder at one point. I don't know what he owns today. And then, who else owns it? BlackRock, or not BlackRock, Blackstone. And
then Larry
Ellison. And I forgot who, there's another conservative up there. I can't remember who it is though. I don't know. I mean, I don't think those guys will have much say, honestly. They'll be able to choose, the CEO and the board, but I don't think they'll have much say on the algorithms. TikTok algorithms are absolutely brilliant. TikTok is the best social media platform, hands down, over any other platform by so far. It's not even close. Like, TikTok blows away every other platform out there. I think they are not going to mess with it. I would be really surprised. And I think it's so much head and shoulders better than anything else that I don't think they'll mess with it.
I agree with you. I think really it's just politics at the end of the day. The optics of being Chinese owned were less appealing, and the optics of throwing the Chinese out as good political points to score, I guess I would say. Like it's an easy political victory.
All right. I mean, yeah, sure.
But I'm a little bit discouraged that you don't think that the Kimmel thing was a victory for the First Amendment.
I didn't say that. I do think.
Well, obviously it was a victory, but that you don't feel that the First Amendment is that well protected at this point. That the First Amendment is still in your mind very much at risk in the current regime.
Don't you feel that? Is there a single person in America that doesn't feel that right now? I mean, if you don't feel that, you are not alive. I mean, if you don't think that in your entire lifetime, Dylan Ratigan, or my entire lifetime, if you don't think that this is the biggest test of the First Amendment in the entire time I've been on this earth, I can't even. There's nothing even close to this.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and I hope that everybody that has the power to do so will rise to the occasion. I hope it doesn't just come down to the economics of the Disney boardroom.
If you're not subscribed, subscribe right here. And if you want to meet me and the team in person at our next live event, hit the link at the top of the description.